All right. Good morning once again. This is it's a Hub where we organize online tech training. All right. We are going to start with general introduction to SQL as one of the recommended tool or programming language for us as data analysts. So we're going to start by understanding what this language is all about. And just before we look at the definition of SQL properly, I would like us to know that out of the tools out there for data analysis or analysis, SQL is highly recommended because it is the only language that allows us to manage data within a database. And as we all know, most of our data reside within a website. So which means that as a data analyst, you should be able to understand the data query language, which is the SQL. So let's start with the definition. So I want to start by highlighting the full meaning of SQL before we look at the proper definition. So what is SQL, or what does the acronym SQL stand for? SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language. It's a programming language used for managing and manipulating data. So the key word here is managing. The key word here is managing and manipulating data stored in relational database management system, also abbreviated to RODBMS. Now, as we proceed, we are going to know the meaning of some of these keywords used in the definition. But before we get there, so that we can understand it properly, every language or every field has its language or terms and terminologies. Now, the term relation itself represents table in database management. Whenever you use the word relation, it represents a structure called table like this. And a table is a two-dimensional structure. A table is a two-dimensional structure, which means that we have values arranged vertically and what? Horizontally. That is why it is said that a table in database management is referred to as what? A two-dimensional array or structure of information. So we have the y-axis, as we all taught, and then we have what? The s-axis. So just in case you want to know why it is described as two-dimension. Now, that is the meaning of relation. But what is used here is relational or relationship. Now, the moment you advance from relation to relationship, then you are now describing another thing as far as the database management system is concerned. So for example, let me create another table. I just want us to understand the reason why some of these keywords are used within the definition, because until you understand them, then it may be difficult for you to really interpret the main function of this language. Now, this is one table. So I can label this as what? Table 1. And then label this one as what? Table 2. Now, in the real sense, what we are saying is that this is capturing attributes. The header, your data header description, they are called attributes in SQL. Attributes. They are called attributes. While the record, they are called rows. They are called rows. That is where you are going to have 1, 2. Now, if we are seeing these two structures as a typical representation of two different data, of two different data tables in one database. So the whole of this that is binding both of them together, we can refer to that as what? Database. We are still coming to know what is database, but I just want us to capture the picture so that anytime I use the word table is different from database. Okay. Now, when you are working with database is just like a storage of data. Okay. Now, as good as it is, it cannot store the data values directly into itself. So it require or it needs a table. You need a table to be able to what? To store those values directly in your database. So that is the reason why I sketched this diagram. So what this diagram is saying is what I just explained now. You can see that what this diagram, this line is binding what? These two tables. Now inside the table, that is where you have your records. I just want you to understand that. Now I'm coming back to the word or the term relation and relationship. Now, the relation is the table individually. Then the ship is the connection between one table in a database and the other. So did you understand that? That is relationship. So if you are using relationship, you are describing the connection between one table with different value and another table with different value within one database. Now, let's go back to the definition. Is a programming language used for managing and manipulating data stored in what? Relational database. Because we have different types of database. We have the MongoDB. Okay, then we have the relational database. Now, the difference between the MongoDB and the relational database is the structure of the information store. One have a well-structured, while the other one do not have what? A well-structured information. And that is why if you are learning SQL for other purposes, not for data analysis, we can now expatiate more the disadvantages and the advantages. But our assignment here as data analyst is to learn the relational what? Database, because most data are stored in a relational database. That is what? A database constituting tables that are linked or connected. Related. Good. Now, so I believe that this explanation is clear, sir, before I move to the next slide. Hope everything is clear.
Very clear, sir.
All right. So now, let's quickly look at still expatiating on the full meaning of SQL. So now that we understand that SQL is a programming language, okay, like we just defined here now, that is used to manage and manipulate data stored in a relational database or in a database. Now, what is the SQL? SQL is the standard language for accessing managing and modifying data in relational database. So this is another way we can define it outside using the first definition that point out that it is a programming language. So what I needed us to understand is that if after learning this and we are asked anytime that is SQL a programming language, this definition has captured it, that truly it is a programming language. Okay, now if we are also looking at SQL based on the tags, based on its functionality, then we can say SQL is a programming language that helps us to access, manage, and modify what data. Now, this is where our role come in as data analyst. Why do I need to learn SQL? Haven't learned Excel, Python, Power BI. What is the benefit of me understanding SQL as well? You see, if you learn those tools without understanding SQL, you have issue in the future, because almost every company today are working harder to make sure that they store their information in the cloud. So a time will come where the mode of storing data today will go obsolete. So it will now be all data must be in your website. And then if you do not understand the language this website uses in managing data, then you have issue. So for example, if a company also wants you as a data analyst to analyze their data and they lack trust on you, so they will not be able to tell you, okay, let's give you our login detail so that you go to our database and manipulate insights from our data. So they will rather mandate you to perform all your analysis directly from the website. So you're going to have issues. So if you are the type that you are very good at Power BI, if there's no Power BI, you cannot analyze data. You are super good in Excel. If there's no Excel, whatever, in that kind of scenario where you are mandated to use to analyze the data directly from the cloud or from the online database, then you have issue without understanding how to speak the SQL query statement. Because what we are going to use as data analysts is for us to understand the SQL query statements that we can use to query our data for insight. Okay, so now let's quickly look at some of the basic concepts of SQL. So before you start learning SQL, there are some basic terms that we need to settle. We need to understand, so that each time you use them, it's just like you saying that you understand a language without understanding the fundamentals, the popular terms used in that language. So let's start by knowing them. The first one is database. You can see that all this while I'll be using database. So if I do not explain what some of these key terms mean, each time I use them might look, a kind of difficult for you to understand. So if you are speaking SQL and you use the word database, what does that actually mean? Database simply means a collection of related data. So let me just abbreviate it that way. A collection of related data. So like the table I drew before can also explain what this definition is saying. Collection of related data. Now let me simplify it. We can define database as data storage. Let me break it down for you to understand. We have the word data on its own. We have data on its own. And then we can have word base as a separate word. So when you put them together, that is what you are defining. Data itself are information in this context. They are information. I know we must have been taught that data are raw facts, but I just want to take that off because this is an advanced training. So now, if we can see data as information, now where this information are stored, it is what we are referring to as what? Base. A container is named after its content. If you get a bucket and you pour water inside, it becomes what? Water container. If you, that same bucket, pour the water away and put sand inside, it becomes what? Sand what? Bucket. So which means that when we say database, it means we are referring to a storage of what? Data. Is that clear, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So now, so when the word collection of related data, because we understand the structure in which will be used to put this value or information together in that database. Now, let's look at the next keyword, which is table. The next keyword, which is table. So in SQL, you cannot do without database. You cannot do without table, like the diagram I drew before. So a table is a collection of related data within a database. So a table is a structure which is used to hold the value, the records in a database. So like I mentioned before, you cannot store these values or record directly in any database. You have to use table to store them within that database. Now, it is this same table that we are referring to as relation. Relation. I hope I'm still making sense, sir. Relation.
Yes.
That's what a table is also known as what? Relation. Collection of related data. That is, there are some cardinality, the what we call cardinality. Cardinality is the art of measuring the relationship degree between one table and the other, where you can now say, okay, table A and table B has what? One-to-one cardinality, which means that what? One-to-one relationship. For example, a company's car assigned to one staff, that is one-to-one relationship. It is only that staff that have access to that car, and that car have access to one staff. For example, if we now say, okay, a class teacher is assigned to teach 10 subjects, that is one to many cardinality. Then we can also have many. We can have many to many. That is where you have, let's say, a company car assigned to what? All the staffs. So we need to understand that even though this particular relation are stored in a database, there are different level of cardinality. There are different level of relationship they what establish, which is important. So that is why you see that we keep using the word related, because the value in one table can relate to the value in another table. Now, the word column is another keyword that you cannot overlook when speaking what? SQL. What does columns mean? Individual elements within a table. For example, when I created a table the other time, this is a table. So all these vertical spaces, they are the column. This, 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 this. They are the columns. They are also called attributes. In fact, here we should see them as attributes. They are also called what? The attributes. So why are we referring to them also as attributes? Attribute provides additional information, provide a descriptive information about your data what? Element. I hope we are following. Okay. So for
Yes,
example,
sir.
if I put a descriptive word here or attribute, let's say what? Customer name. Customer slash what? Name. For example, this is an attribute that is describing all the what? The information that will be what? Imputed in this what? Space. Then if I put state, this is another what? Attribute. So let's get that understood. Now, the next keyword we must understand in as much we speak SQL is rows. So there is no individual out there that will claim that he or she can speak SQL as a programming language without understanding these keywords. What are rows? Rows are individual entries. That is record. This entry also means what? Record. Individual record or individual word entries within a table. So you can see that what? If we are to define a table structure, if you are asked, for example, that what are the elements of a table? One, column or attribute, then row, then the cells. So rows are individual entries within a table. Now, there's another keyword that we can never speak SQL without using. In fact, the whole essence of us as data analysts learning this language because we understand this word, that SQL is a query word.
Query.
Because the word
Language.
query, yeah, the word query means tax, means tax. In other words, when you write query statement, we have what we call SQL what? Query statement. When you write query statement, these are lines of code that will be used or that are used to ask the SQL to do something for you. So what you need to know or what you need to focus on as a data analyst is those query statements and using those SQL query what? Keywords. Keywords. So the keywords in this case, they are the inbuilt functions. They are the inbuilt command within SQL that you add together when you are constructing those query statements that will be used to derive or to identify trend, pattern, and then also find out the correlation at the end of the day. So you cannot claim that you can use SQL to analyze data without understanding how to write this word query. So what does the word query mean? It means what? Request for specific data or what? Action, like I've explained before. I hope that is clear also, sir.
Very okay.
All right. So now let's quickly look at the next slide. Now, before I come to this, I'm going to quickly dive into the installation because before you can speak this language, particularly for data analysis, you need to set up a server because SQL is a server-side programming language. Are you with me? So when you refer to a language as a server-side, what does that mean? A server-side languages are languages that uses server to run. The server is just like an application that you need to install to be able to set up your framework. You know, when we're learning Excel, we mentioned framework and library, if you can still remember. Framework of Excel is what you know as the spreadsheet.
Yes.
The spreadsheet is the framework because framework is like a platform that allows us as data analysts to bring all data aspects in one place. In one place. When we were in Python, we also talk about framework. The Jupyter what notebook is a framework. So any of these data analytics tools has their own design what framework. So you must have an environment that allows you to write and execute your code and also import or load in the data you want to speak to. So we are going to quickly shift our attention to the installation of how do I prepare my system for SQL what? Analysis. So if I want to use SQL to analyze data, what and what do I need to install? So that will take us off from this slide. So we'll come back to the slide where we have set up the environment and we are ready to run this code. Because I don't want us to just to be explaining them without practicalizing them. So let's quickly dive into setting up an SQL workspace. Now, to start with, the first thing is for you to open a browser. So you need to install two applications. Two installations will be involved. Number one is the server.
Your line is breaking.
Can you hear me now?
Is it from my side or your side?
Or can you hear me? Is it clearer now? Is it better? Is it better?
Okay, it's better now. I can hear you.
All right. So now
It was breaking before, but I can hear you now.
the topic is setting up.
I can hear you now.
Yeah, the topic is setting up
Hello?
your working environment. You said you can hear me. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me? Setting up SQL working environment. Can you hear me? Seems
Are you there?
yes, I am here. As if you cannot hear me. Can you hear me?